first of all, before we start, we are talking about innovations, and I think it's very important to understand that once we do research projects, we are not only looking for truth, but we are looking for limitations and how we can find the limits of our knowledge and acknowledge them and embrace them. So I would cordially invite you today with these 6 presentations to see how we embrace the limitation of these studies and how we push the knowledge further into the new realms. Regarding the organization of the event, I will gladly thank the judges who took their own time and dedicated this next 2 hours for reviewing and giving a feedback and asking questions regarding this presentation. So maybe go the round of applause for the judges. And the structure of the presentation is 10 minutes long. So I invite our dear presenters to respect the time limits. And after each presentation, we will open the floor to the 5 to 8 minutes question and answer session, where we can create more conversation and debates for each presenter. And let's enjoy the process. I will not take too much of time. Without further ado, let me introduce the first presenter, Karim Abou, Precision Pulse Frequency and Duration Matter in Upper Airway Activation, is the first presenter who will give us the talk, and I welcome you on the stage and take over the position.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karim Abou, a PhD candidate of Biomedical Engineering program. Today, I'll be presenting this topic to you. But before I start, there is a common saying that the number of times and the time you spend doing something is actually going to impact the result you're going to get at the end of the day. Suppose you've chosen to go to the gym to train a certain muscle of your body, and you have to consider a few things. 3 are key things to consider. You consider the amount of weight you're going to incorporate into your gym routine. You consider the number of hours you're going to train, and the number of days you're going to be going to the gym. All these are going to sum up to impact the end result, or in terms of developing that muscle group that you want to develop. So this analogy that relates to this topic I'll be presenting to you this afternoon. Precision pulses, frequency, and duration matter in upper airway activation. In the upper airway, we have so many muscles, but we're going to be talking about the genioglossus. So the genioglossus muscle is the extrinsic muscle of the tongue that helps protrude the tongue and create space for airflow to be smooth. However, the reduction in the tonicity of genioglossus can actually result to a sleep disorder called obstructive sleep apnea. It's a condition in which there is repeated narrowing or collapse of the upper airway during sleep. And this could occur at least 5 times per hour throughout the sleep. This OSA affects at least 1 billion people globally. This could be more. It's associated with significant health implications, ranging from daytime sleepiness, as you can see here, and different kinds of cardiovascular diseases that range from myocardial infarction, heart failure, and it's much more worse to the point that it could lead to death. So the first line treatment for obstructive sleep apnea is continuous positive airway pressure, but this treatment is tolerated by less than 1/3 of OSA patients. And that's the reason why different alternatives have come up. One of them is hypoglossal nerve stimulation, so which uses electric pulses sent it to the hypoglossal nerve on the neck to activate the genioglossus muscle I mentioned earlier to push the tongue forward and open the airway. So it's a treatment modality for obstructive sleep apnea. But the long-term success rates could be less than 60%, and this could be attributed to the pulse calibration steps. So hypoglossal nerve stimulation pulses are optimized by observing tongue movements and monitoring patients' reported pain. However, true muscle recruitment level is revealed by genioglossus EMG. In fact, the EMG could even be used to estimate tongue movement and even the pain level. Therefore, we could use EMG to help optimize functionally safe pulses by estimating the tolerable pain threshold. This leads me to the aim and hypothesis of this talk. So the aim is to characterize electrical pulse duration, frequency, and amplitude in the activation of genioglossus muscle, which relies on the hypothesis that EMG responses are independently modulated by pulse duration, frequency, and amplitude, peaking at an optimal frequency. So to achieve this, myself and my colleague, we isolated the middle branch of the hypoglossal nerve using Sprague-Dawley rats, as you can see here, and applied electrical pulses that are randomized between the pulse duration, frequency, and the current amplitude. So we measure the genioglossus EMG. So after obtaining all this, the EMG from the genioglossus, it's processed offline. This green picture waveform is typical EMG from genioglossus. And if you zoom into it, you can see the compound muscle action potential. Each one of them are overlaid here, and you find the average to quantify the EMG response in terms of the area under the curve AUC, the peak-to-peak voltage VPP. And these are the results. We found out that at the pulse duration of 100 microseconds, we realized that the peak-to-peak voltage response increases with the current amplitude, and you can see it with 100 microseconds. The same is true for when you use the pulse duration of 200 microseconds, and it's much more for pulse duration of 300 microseconds. But what you have to observe here is that as you increase the pulse frequency, this does not automatically translate to improvement of peak-to-peak voltage, because between 30 to 40 hertz, we realize that we kind of reach a plateau. So increasing beyond 30 to 40 hertz, we might not be able to improve the peak-to-peak voltage response anymore. And this peak-to-peak voltage response, if you observe, actually tracks with the pulse duration. As we see that using pulse duration of 200 microseconds, the peak-to-peak voltage response is much more relative to using pulse duration of 100 microseconds. And this is even much more if we use pulse duration of 300 microseconds, as evident, as you can see from this graph. So the area under the curve, similarly for the area under the curve actually represents the level of recruitment of the genioglossus muscle. Okay, so it also increases as we increase the current amplitude using the pulse duration of 100 microseconds. This is also true for 200 microseconds and for 300 microseconds, even much more with 300 microseconds. So, but when we use longer pulses, we can achieve much more response in terms of AUC and much more with 300 microseconds. So in summary, the optimal frequency here is 30 to 40 hertz. If you observe, as we have observed, when we are increasing from 100 microseconds to 300 microseconds at the optimal frequency, and just using medium amplitude, we can increase the EMG responses as effectively as using higher amplitudes at 200 versus 100 microseconds. So this simply means that we cannot just simply pick a small pulse duration and keep increasing the amplitude. No, this doesn't work like that. We could achieve optimal response by simply picking an optimized pulse frequency at a slightly high pulse duration, and we can achieve superb EMG responses. In conclusion, optimized pulse duration, frequency, and moderate stimulus amplitude maximize genioglossus activation. Optimized pulses deliver charge less frequently, minimizing overall charge delivered to the tissue, the hypoglossal nerve, in this case, and potentially reducing the pain felt by the patient. Precisely shaped electrical pulses can ensure safer and efficient upper airway muscle activation for improved hypoglossal nerve stimulation success rate. Because this in the end is what we want to achieve. Because as I said earlier, hypoglossal nerve stimulation success rate might be less than 60%. And if we are able to optimize the pulses used in it, we might be able to increase this percentage. So thank you. Before I end, I want to acknowledge the following. My co-advisors, Dr. Jason Amatori, Dr. Masoud Khoich, and my colleagues who have always lent their support to me while I'm conducting the experiment. Hiba Badawi, I hope she's here, and Marie Michelle, she's here as well. Thank you so much.
Why the frequency of 40 hertz is better than the others?
Okay, so again, I want to cut this analogy again. So we do know, for example, if we go to the gym to train, if we train too frequently, we might not achieve the desired results. Too frequently, for example, we go into the gym for 6 days a week. We only have 1 day to rest. This is not good for our body. The muscles cannot heal. And we know that the building muscle requires rest. The building activity takes place during rest period. So same thing for genioglossus. When we actually increase the pulse frequency, maybe when we start low and we gradually increase towards high, when we get to a certain threshold, we begin to discharge, we begin to deliver too much charge into the tissue, and the delivery of too much charge does not necessarily impact the result. So here, we kind of we reach a threshold that the muscle requires. Giving it much more, we cannot go beyond that. So it's like charge. The muscle requires charges, and if you give too much charge, they don't use them anymore, and you cannot get much more results. So you are over-laboring the muscle in a sense.
Do you think that you would have achieved a better activation of the nerve if you went above 300 microseconds in pulse duration? And is there a reason why you didn't go above?
Okay, this is, I've presented just a preliminary result from my work. The recent experiment I conducted actually raised the pulse duration higher, and I could see from that result that if we do increase pulse duration, we can actually achieve much more, especially when we use between 400 microseconds and 500 microseconds. So, however, we shouldn't just increase arbitrarily, because if we do increase arbitrarily, we might be delivering too much charge to the tissue. What we care about is using optimal pulse parameters.
Thank you for the presentation. So you showed all of these action potentials, right?
Yes.
And you said that two parameters that are important in your analysis are the EMG, which is somehow an average of all of these, if I got it right, and the area under the curve, which you measure through the peak-to-peak voltage.
Yes.
All right. So my question is, because I'm not into this this field, why these parameters are relevant to the OSA problem? So
Okay.
you didn't. We related these parameters. They changed based on changing the pulse duration, frequency, and amplitude. But why these are relevant to making the condition better if you figure out higher EMGs or higher AUC, right?
Okay.
How does this relate to the physical condition of the patient?
All right. So, like I said earlier, when hypoglossal nerve stimulus parameters are being optimized, they are done by in association with observing the tongue movement and, of course, getting feedback from the patient. So, when we observe the movement of the tongue, I think you cannot know the level of recruitment of the muscle. So if you include measuring EMG activity with it, you can know precisely how much of the muscle is being recruited while tongue motion is taking place. So it serves the purpose of you monitoring how much you have been able to recruit it. It also helps you monitor not using too much of stimulus, injecting too much of stimulus into the muscle. Because let's say we are only observing the tongue move and say, okay, because the tongue moves, it's okay. If someone increases the pulse parameter much more, the tongue might as well move. But maybe this level of motion is not efficient because you have used too much of stimulus to achieve that. So you precisely measuring the genioglossus muscle activity, you can determine the level of recruitment at that point. So this level of recruitment is optimal, and it's optimal for the tongue motion. So it's a way to ensure that you are not using too much stimulus parameter. At the same time, you are using what is appropriate for you to cause tongue motion, forward movement, and to ensure that there is higher success rate of that treatment modality.
Thank you for the answer. Just to complement, so higher, for example, area under the curve is better.
Yes,
higher is better.
Higher area under the curve means more
yeah.
motor units are being recruited.
All right, and in terms of the
in terms of
EMG, higher EMG is better, and why?
Higher volt peak to peak means the strength of the EMG.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is better.
Yes.
All right. Okay. I have a second question. So you found like this sweet spot, the optimal spot in terms of frequency, time, and amplitude, right?
Yes.
But this is for rectangular pulses.
Rectangular pulses are commonly used.
Yeah, but why not, I don't know, sinusoidal pulses,
why
triangular
not
pulses?
Why not triangular, and so on?
Yeah.
With the use of rectangular pulses, we can actually precisely regulate the time off, and the time on. So basically, this is the reason why we use this kind of rectangular pulses.
Okay, but try other pulses. I don't know.
These are commonly used, and of course, we do know in clinical interventions, we have conventions, and we want to stick to conventions. Yes, conventions, that doesn't mean that we cannot modify conventions, but if the conventions are working fine, why do we want to change it to something that has not been tried and tested? I mean, you get my point.
All right,
Yeah.
Thank you.
No other questions? Let's give a big applause for the presenter.
Thank you.
From the pulse frequency and health applicability, we go to energy innovations and expanding 5G networks. Saad Aid, I hope I pronounced well name, sorry. Energy harvesting from 5G using reshaped grid antenna arrays. Please give a welcome applause for Saad. Good luck.
Hello everyone, I'm Asad Eid, and today I'll be presenting my thesis project titled Energy Harvesting from 5G Using Reshaped Grid Antenna Arrays. So we are living in the time of the fast technology growth where IoT devices are getting smarter, smaller, more connected, and even a bigger part of our daily life. Based on some statistics, in 2025, we will have around 30 million, in 2027, we will have around 30 million IoT devices connected around the world. These tiny devices are everywhere, in our university, houses, cars, and even in some cases, they are implanted in our bodies for medical purposes. And now these components, in order to function, they rely on batteries, and this is a big problem. Besides the environmental effects from chemicals to pollution to waste, in some cases, especially in biomedical sensors, changing batteries is difficult, and it may lead to data corruption or data loss, especially when we are talking about health monitoring or vital sign detection. So we lose a lot of data. Now, the question here, can we power the IoT devices without the use of battery? Here where energy harvesting comes in, and this is the main focus of my project, which is how to power IoT devices without batteries using signals around us, and specifically the 5G signal at millimeter wave. Now, to build such a system, the energy harvesting system, we should design something called rectanna, which is a combination of an antenna and a rectifier. The antenna will help us catch the 5G signal, then we'll transfer them to the rectifier. The rectifier will transform the high frequency signals into usable DC power to power these IoT devices. Now, to start our project, we should focus on 4 main KPIs, which are the antenna size. Since IoT devices are getting smaller and smaller, the design should be as compact as possible. Then we should focus about the bandwidth. So if the design is working at a wide band range of frequencies, it will catch more and more signals. Then, of course, the gain of the antenna. The more gain we have, the more received power we have. And the final one is the efficiency of the rectifier, which is how much RF power will be converted into DC. Now, in our field, we have a lot of antennas. Here are some examples of them. Starting with the first KPI, which is the size, we will eliminate Vivaldi and the horn antenna because they are bulky components, and we want something small. Then the dipole antenna is not efficient at millimeter wave, so it will be eliminated. We will end up with 3 antennas, patch, grid, and slot, which are planar antennas. They are small, but focusing on the bandwidth and the gain, we ended up choosing the grid antenna. So the grid antenna has a compact size. The bandwidth and the gain are moderate. When we are designing the antenna, we should focus on increasing this bandwidth and increasing this gain. Now, the last things that we should talk about when talking about antenna is polarization. So in simple words, this antenna is linearly polarized. So it will catch signals coming as in line, in one plane, as a line towards this antenna. When harvesting, it's better to have a circularly polarized antenna that catches signal from both planes as a circular motion. So also we will work on designing this antenna to be circularly polarized. Now, for the second part, which is the rectifier, we will focus on 3 main parameters, which are the efficiency of the diode. That's why we chose the MA4E1317 diode, which is the best diode for harvesting in the market. And then the input matching network and the output matching network efficiencies. So we have our antenna, we have our rectifier. For maximum power transfer, we should match the impedance of the antenna to the impedance of the rectifier. That's why we use the input matching network. And then at the output, we have our diode and then the load. So we should match these 2 impedances together. And since the impedance of the diode is imaginary, and our load is pure real, 100 ohm resistor. So that's why we should have an output matching network. Then going into my design and what I did. So we started by a rectangular grid antenna that is working at 32 gigahertz. So this is the graph of the reflection coefficient. Everything below minus 10 is the operational frequency. So this device is working at 32 gigahertz. Now, we want our antenna to work at a wideband range of frequency. Theoretically, the current distribution on an antenna will be focused more on the edges. So like this one, it's working at 32. So if I want to increase or to have a wideband performance, I should increase these edges, and I will introduce more operational frequencies. And by tuning this antenna, these frequencies will get close to each other, forming the wideband performance. Now that's what I did. Instead of using rectangles, I use a hexagon-shaped antenna. Then here you can see the performance. Instead of working at 32 gigahertz, now it's working between 27.5 and 34, almost 35 gigahertz. Okay. Now for the gain and for the circle polarization, we used a novel method that has never done before. I called it octa-sequential rotation. So basically, instead of using one antenna, we used an array of 8 antennas, which automatically will increase the gain. And to transform this antenna, which is linear, to circularly polarized antenna, we applied the octa-sequential rotation. Instead of feeding the antenna with normal signals, we are feeding this antenna with signals that are shifted by 45 degrees. So there's a 45-degree phase shift between each antenna and an antenna, starting from 0, 45, all the way back to 360. Here we have the wideband performance of the antenna. Here we have the axial ratio, which is how we can measure if we can know if it's circularly polarized or not. Everything below minus 3 dB in the axial ratio is circularly polarized. In my case, it's almost 0, which means it's perfectly circularly polarized. Now, to let this method work, we should design a network. So all the outputs from all the signals or the power from the antenna should be combined together. So this is the difference between the gain from the first antenna was 6.7, and now it's 13.8 dBIC, which is almost times 5 the gain. Now, as I told you, to let the sequential rotation work, the power from the antenna should be combined together. So here we have a network that have 8 input ports. Each port also should have a 45-degree phase shift to get the signal from the antenna. Then they will all be combined into one single branch, and here we will place our rectifier. So this network has 7 Wilkinson power dividers that work at a wideband range of frequency, and 16 resonators that works as a phase shifter. Here we have the performance, a wideband performance, and then here we have a 45-degree phase shift between each port. Now, for the last part of the simulation, which is the rectifier. So the rectifier also should work at the same frequency of the antenna to match each other. So the rectifier is working between 28 and 33 gigahertz. Now, to design the input matching network and the output matching network, instead of using lumped components or stubs or radial stubs, also we did a novel technique, which is the coupled stub. And the coupling between the stubs and the feeding lines is responsible for the wideband performance of this device. Here we have the simulation using ADS. And now for the efficiency, basically the efficiency in literature review is between 35% and 60% at this frequency. So there was a trade-off between the efficiency and the reflection. So we balanced both the reflection and the efficiency to get better results. So our efficiency at simulation is 50%. And now the simulation is done. We went to fabrication. We fabricated our design in our lab. In Impact Lab in Oxy. Here we have the antenna. So we should test the antenna alone. Then here we have the whole system. We did our measurement also in SRB in our lab. Here we have the performance of the measured antenna in blue. We have a wideband from 28 to 32 gigahertz. Here we have the polarization. It's circularly polarized from 28.5 almost to plus 33 gigahertz. Here we have the gain and the radiation pattern of the antenna, which are close to each other. Now for the measurement, we are still applying some measurement. Hopefully we will be done with the measurement by next week before my defense and publication. We are monitoring what could we change to increase the efficiency from the load to the input matching network or output matching network. But the first results are a 30% efficiency of our design. Now, to conclude everything, I want you to think, in a couple of years, you will take your phone, go to the iPhone panel, where you can find the Wi-Fi and the cellular data. There's a button. You click this button, and then your phone will be charged automatically without using the charging port, using signals around you. Thank you.
Thank you, Asad, for the nice presentation. I am curious about this 32 gigahertz, which is like the resonance frequency.
Yes.
How hard is to shift it right and left? If you want to, I understand that you achieved this wide range of frequencies where everything, this S11 parameter is below, I think you said 10 or minus 10.
Yes.
Which makes
For
it,
example, this one.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but there is somehow the range around 32 is better, is acting better than the full range. So how critical is this in power harvesting? Can I say that frequencies around 32, you can harvest power more than from the remaining ones within this range of frequencies? And is there a need to make this minima shifted right and left to make it like somehow dynamic?
Configurable if you want.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. It's a little bit hard because if you want to change the frequency of operation, you should change the length of this device. So it's basically related to the wavelength. So if I want to design at 26, the wavelength will be different than 32. So it will change. But here you have, for example, you have your efficiency, peak efficiency at 32, but also you can harvest power all the way from 28 to 33. So it's basically related to the wavelength. Yes.
And why 32? Because is it a carrier frequency in 5G? Why the choice of 32 as being the optimal frequency? Or this is what you got from the simulations, basically?
No, so it's basically, I'm designing at millimeter wave. So it's basically between 24 and 100 gigahertz. So now the technology of 5G now that we are using, especially in USA and China, they are using sub-6 gigahertz, which is frequency below gigahertz, 6 gigahertz. So as they want to move up with the, if they want to have faster internet, yes, we should design our.
So my second question: Have you tried it in harvesting power actually? And so what amount of power are we talking about? Because at these high frequencies, we know that the signal decay really fast.
Yes,
and the attenuation.
The attenuation is very big.
Yes.
Yes.
So how?
I will talk about the attenuation project about the attenuation. Right. So yes, we've tried it. We have our horn antenna. Here we have our design, and that's how we are doing our measurement. So we have our horn antenna. We have the design. The distance between them is 9 centimeters, which is the far field region, and we are monitoring at different powers. As you told, you are saying if there's a power problem, that's what we are facing, and we are trying to improve it. For the 5G signals at millimeter wave, at larger distances, there will be more attenuation. That's why researchers now are working on something called RAS, which are reflective surface that will direct the signal, amplify the signals. Yes.
Thank you.
Where does this 8 antennas come from? Why 8, not 4, not 16? Okay.
So basically, in literature, there is 4 antennas. There's something called sequential rotation with using 4 antennas. But if you want the gain to be higher, since we are talking about the power and attenuation, the higher gain, the best. So you can do 4, but the gain is very low. So we tried to do 16, but the design was too big, and we are using it to harvest for small devices. So then it's 4, 16. Why don't we do 8? Is it possible? Let us try to do it. Then I came with the idea of the 45-degree phase shift between each component, and you get a high gain, which is 13.79. So we went with 8 antennas. Because 4 has a low gain, 16 the size is too big, so we went with 8 antennas.
You don't you need to compare the two with each other? I mean, how do you know for sure that the 8 is going to be better than the 4? and so on?
I did the comparison between 8, 4, and 16, but if I want to do the comparison here, I need like 40 minutes.
Thank you for the interesting presentation. So what, in your opinion, are the next steps in this research to get this technology to work? You said in a couple of years we may have a button on our phone.
Yeah. So basically, for me, it's how to increase the efficiency, which I'll be done by soon. So now, for example, this device will give me around 50 milliamperes, which is a little bit small amount of energy. But for IoT devices, for example, if you take Arduino wants 200 milliamperes to work. So this device is 1 millimeter thin. If you place a couple of devices above each other, we will get around, in series, for example, we will get around 100 or 200 milliamperes, which will power the sensor, biometric sensors, Arduino processors, and etc.
So next, we would like to invite our next speaker, Ahmed Fakhreddin Sattout, who will talk about image features, reordering, and adjustment to mitigate the transferability effect of adversarial attacks for autonomous driving cars, AI, and security.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ahmed. I recently defended my PhD, and this is part of my research under Professor Ali Shab. Okay. So, have you ever experienced a ride in an autonomous car, or imagined being in a car without like a driver behind the wheel? Can we trust, let's say, the intelligent system blindly? Today we will discover that by, let's say, talking about my research, image features reordering adjustment to mitigate the transferability effect of adversarial attacks for autonomous driving cars. Through that, we will talk about what are adversarial attacks and what is the solution and our proposed to mitigate such attacks, and we will go through the evaluation and the final key results. We can see deep learning networks have been used widely in many different domains, such as medical domain. For example, we can use it for disease localization, and for security, also for as face detection and recognition, and our main of interest in autonomous driving cars. Autonomous driving cars relies on a combination of sensor and actuators that to drive seamlessly. This includes radar, lidars, and ultrasonics, and also cameras. Cameras play a very crucial role in object detection, that's enabling the car to, let's say, see or identify the object like pedestrians and stop signs and cars. However, these deep neural networks are vulnerable to adversarial attacks. What are adversarial attacks or adversarial noise? If we can see that if we have trained classifiers on animal species, and we pass this image, we can see it's a panda. It's correctly predicted as a panda by the classifier with a confidence of 57. However, if we add a small perturbation, this is noise called perturbation, and pass again the image after it's altered, we can see the classifier will predict it as a gibbon with 99%. And this is clearly not a gibbon, but the CC of the attack is it's not recognizable by a human, but it will fool the model. The same apply for the medical applications. This is a normal medical image, and then after adding the small noise, it's transformed as classified as a let's say disease, and it goes beyond the noises by using adversarial classes with someone who is not let's say has access to any system or a room, and you can see it's impersonate this lady. even more, like for this is a KFC sign. If an attacker manipulated with a noise and still recognizable to human as a sign, right? But the car, it will recognize it as stop. Can you imagine what will happen if this if it's applied in the real world with someone? So let's say recognizing the object needs to be precise and accurate to secure the autonomous environment. For example, this is an 80, right? Okay. However, this is an adversarial image, and the car will recognize it as 60. That's really dangerous for the speed limit. Now, if we want to talk about the literature, this is a state-of-the-art detecting method to detect these images, okay, the adversarial images. This is simply, but this method says, what if we decrease the resolution of the image and compare the output of each image if with a certain threshold, and then we see if it's above or less. Then we detect, let's say, identify the adversarial nature of this image. We will compare our study with this state-of-the-art method. We propose two tier of defense, especially for designed to, let's say, detect two types of noises: high-level noises and low-level noises, which is the perturbations. Using the first defense is one class supported to machine, and the novel algorithm that we will introduce you soon. The first line of defense is we take the image, okay, we get the mask of the image, and then rather than checking the adversarial nature of the image, we check the mask, which is easier and faster, and then this is the first line of defense, okay? Then if the image is not detected in the first line, we go to the next line. Here, this is our algorithm. We get the image, and then we mask the background because we don't have any useful information in the background. And then we split vertically, we swap it, and then we generate another version. So mirrored, by mirroring the processed version, and this is what we call it feature reordering. And then we do some filtering and histogram equalization, and we generate the final two results. Now, for detecting the adversarial using this, let's say, pipeline, we can see our decision making. We can see that now we have two additional images rather than the main one to make the final decision. Okay, and we pass it to the we train another model called verified. We pass the two generated image. If all agreed, if the prediction of the two models all agreed, then it's clean. Otherwise, it's adversarial. Okay, this is the full pipeline. This is the image. This is the main model that the attacker tried to attack or evade. And then this is our detection pipeline that's work in parallel with the model. This is the first line of defense. Then we get the mask, and then we check the adversarial nature, and then we pass it to the F algorithm. We get a new different version of the input, and then we classify them. If they are agreed, then clean, otherwise adversarial. Now, let's talk about some result here. For the MNIST dataset, which is a grayscale dataset, we can see that our method enhance the here is the performance of our method compared to feature squeezing. Our method is in dark blue. The competitor is in purple versus 11 type of adversarial attacks. Okay, we can see that we enhance the detection for FGSM and VIM attacks. However, we have a comparable result for the rest, and we still maintain 97% detection accuracy overall. However, for the more complex dataset like color datasets, CIVAR10 dataset, we have tremendously enhanced detection rate for FGSM, BIM, and DeepFool and the GSMA, and the overall detection outperformed the feature squeezing with more than, let's say, 10%. And the third dataset. The third dataset, which is the GTSRB dataset, which is the stop sign, that's the dataset we are interested in. We can see that our method outperformed the feature squeezing in most of the adversarial attacks with 99.2 detection accuracy. To even more validate our method, we projected we generate adversarial images with 14 different perturbations, ranging from very small imperceptible noises to very large noises. And we can see our method in the blue maintain a sustainable and robust detection accuracy. It's not the case for the feature squeezing. Okay, and this is the overall detection for 11 adversarial attacks for 3 different heterogeneous data sets. We can see that our method is generalizable and reliable with a detection rate of more than 95%. The overall. Let's stick for about the false positive rate. We can see that for MNIST and GTRB dataset, we can see that it's let's say comparable. However, for the CIFAR-10 dataset, we can see that our method suffer for these datasets. For the speed, if we want to talk about detection time, we can see that our method here it's faster than feature squeezing with 15 milliseconds only to detect the adversarial image. Finally, we proposed a 2-tiered defense algorithm, defense pipeline for that let's say mitigate the adversarial attacks for low and high perturbation level. We proved that our method is generalizable through 11 types of adversarial attacks, and also can be generalized for 3 different data sets, color or gray. It doesn't matter. And the proposed method is robust for a wide range of adversarial perturbation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahmed. So, if I understood correctly, you took this image and you augmented it by doing this specific type of rotation / translation. And you got now a bigger set where you can have more confidence in your results. Is that right?
In making the final decision,
yes.
Yes.
So, what comes to mind? Why this is the optimal augmentation? Yani, why? What is the? Can you claim that this is optimal in terms of? Why not someone can come up with a different way to augment the data, and which might give me more accurate predictions? So what's the theoretical basis of doing these types of rotations mirroring?
It is actually a very good question. What we are trying here is to change the feature set of the inputs. Okay, so when we train on the different AI model, adversarial attacks, they are transferable in nature. So if we keep the same image with the noise and then move it, let's say, predicted on different image without changing anything, the another train model, even if it's trained in different architecture, or let's say using even, let's say, machine learning model, not deep learning model, the noise will still there and will affect the model. However, if we change the feature set, which means we change the set of the noises also. So which means the distribution of noise will be changed, and the adversarial noise will be attained, will be, let's say, less, and we mitigate this transferability effect. This is the first part of the question. The second one, we prove that it's effective and optimized by the result. Like for 3 different data sets, we have maintained 95+%. But yes, they might try to different transformation and get better result. They might. Yeah.
So I can think of this as a game between the adversary and you.
Exactly.
So now I assume that the adversary knows your technique.
Mm-hmm.
And so that he can craft a noise. Let's say you're rotating simply, which you're not doing. Let's say to make to make it clear. So let's say you're rotating. So I can craft a noise that is rotationally invariant.
Okay.
So when you rotate, the noise you will not be able to detect.
Okay.
I mean, if someone knows your technique, can he or she design a noise distribution which is somehow invariant to what you do, and then your technique will, I don't know, will not yield the same results?
I think this is somehow hypothetical, a good question. But what I can do to adapt this variant in the noise, I can also do some randomization in the technique. So rather than let's say cut it in vertically, okay, I can do another further step And even I can do randomization process. So which means I can, rather than swap it in in this way, I can reverse the swapping, or even let's say do an inverse or apply some another transformation. So by let's say introducing some randomization, I can, let's say, still robust against the adversarial, let's say, that might be fit for this only transformation. So this one.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm not very familiar with this domain, but I wanted to ask more about the numbers that you mentioned there, the percentages. How important are these percentages? So for me, in my domain, when I see 95% versus 97%, this is absolutely the same thing. Okay, so how important is it for you to have that difference? How does it compare to the current techniques? Like if you're achieving 96.5, is it much better than 95.5? What does it reflect? What are we looking at actually here? If you're looking at, you're saying a recognition, right? You're recognizing with level of 96.5%. Like, are you taking how many samples and verifying that you actually measure to this accuracy? How does this experiment work exactly?
Okay, so here, if we go back to the previous slide with this MNIST data set. Okay, this as you said, we did not achieve like a much in accuracy in manner, but however, this is a very simple data set. Okay, the other method failed to generalize their approach to different attacks. This is what this is our novelty. So if you can see here, for the FGSM and BIM attack, they achieve like very low detection accuracy compared to our methods, and our methods still doing good for different type of attacks. This is the novelty in our.
Which is your method? Because I see many of them.
Method is the blue one. This is feature reordering, and this is the other method. Yes. So in each and every attack, our method doing like a tremendous good detection, regardless the attack and regardless the type of data set. It is colored or gray. So, and with different domain, which means here, this is a stop sign data set, and this is the CFAR 10 data set, which is classification of cars, birds, and so on. So it's totally different and still maintain a high accuracy. But let's say the method we compare to the state of the art, it's not the same. So they have a drop like 10% compared to the previous one, and for the next one also. So they don't maintain consistent accuracy. And if we go further by spreading the noises with that start from very small noise, you can see that our method is very stable to and resistible for the noise changing in the input, whereas the other method it's suffer. So which means is it's really sensitive to the noise level. But for our method, it's robust for that.
Regarding processing time,
yes.
is it how does it compare as well?
This is the processing time. Detecting, let's say, this is our method is faster than the feature squeezing method, and this is per image. So we detect any image, we detect the adversarial nature with only 15 milliseconds.
An issue with the graphs that you have, and so help me understand a little bit.
Yes.
Like when you put a graph where it starts at 0.014 and the other one, for example, starts at 90%. Yeah, like your starting of the graph is 0.014. So I'm looking at a difference that is very, very little.
Yeah.
0.0002.
Yes.
Is that relevant in this domain? Is this
Absolutely.
difference a very big difference?
Absolutely. When you are talking about autonomous cars and the car is moving, so you need to maintain a very fast detection. So otherwise, you will have like the system will stuck, or you will determine your speed maybe 20 kilometers or 40 kilometers. So the faster is the better, absolutely.
Of course, but we're talking about here
Yes,
milliseconds or?
Yes, it's still good for
Okay.
for real-time application. It's still good.
And is that difference significant different? Like when you assess, do you statistically analyze this data? Like, is this an absolute value of 0.015, or is it within
This is we
plus minus? Is
yes,
there
absolutely. We did like let's say 100 or 10 times detecting images, and then we take the average for both methods, and we get this.
So what is your standard deviation or error in this case?
I didn't count it. Didn't mention in the study.
Okay, because if they're overlapping and if you don't have a significant difference, then
It's barely can be, يعني, and I here I measured like with 5 degrees, 5 level of degrees in the speed. Okay, so this is the يعني, this number will not change, but only the numbers after that. So I just put these. Any other question? Yeah. Yes, we can, as long as we proved that to be generalizable to data set that are on MNIST data set is a number or digit data set, okay, and it's doing very well. And this is the 3 data set here we're projecting. And CIFAR-10 also it's a data set that's considering cars, let's say types of animal and any other objects. So as long as they generalize to these, stop signs is simpler. The object of the stop signs and the other car related, they are simpler in features. So I assume they will do that. It will let's say generalize well for these data sets.
And can you briefly explain what feature squeezing means? Like,
yes.
Exactly. Maybe you covered it. I don't know.
Yes, this is feature squeezing. Okay, feature squeezing, which means we take the image. Okay, this is the color representation 8-bit. Okay, what they do is they decrease the representation of the level or do quantization for different level. For example, here they represent the color, the bit with 8 digit, and the pixel, sorry, the 8 digit. Here 7 and 6, and then after that they pass each image to the model itself, and the output of the model, the vector, the logic vector of the model, they compare it to the rest of the images, and they have a training threshold. You can do it in pre process. You have a trained threshold. Comparing with the threshold, you can determine if it's above the threshold, then it's adversarial. It's less than the threshold, it's clean. Any other question? Thank you. Thank you.
So next, we would like to ask Ghadir Jalloul. Ghadir will be presenting her study entitled "A Highly Efficient Iron-Doped UIO66 for Rapid Removal of Tetracycline Antibiotic from Water."
Hello, everyone. Today, as about highly efficient iron-doped UIO66 for the rapid removal of tetracycline antibiotic from water. We'll go through all these sections throughout the presentation. So starting with antibiotic resistance, imagine one day you wake up, go to the kitchen to prepare your sandwich, and while using the knife, you cut your finger. Out of a sudden, you catch some infection. That after some days, you go to the doctor and he prescribes some antibiotic for that treatment, and things get worse. After a few other days, infection passes throughout the whole hand to the body, you get hospitalized, and eventually you die. This is a realistic, simple explanation of what antibiotic resistance might cause to us as humans. After 100 years of the discovery of antibiotics, we are now facing awareness for antibiotic resistance effects in a way that experts says by 2050, 10 million deaths are expected, and this number would overcome the death caused by cancer. You may ask me, why do we as a human experience such a threat, a global threat? It's because of the continuous exposure of the organisms or bacteria into the environment to the continuously discharged antibiotic. Those superbugs could cause incurable bacterial infection, increase in mortality rate, escalating treatment cost, and outbreaks of disease. If someone didn't understand, it's because we misuse and overuse antibiotics and continuously discharge them into the environment without any control, in a way that the consumption of the daily doses has increased by tenfold in 30 years. We will focus, as mentioned here, on tetracycline antibiotic because it's the second most used antibiotic worldwide due to its low cost and wide antimicrobial spectrum effects. We can expect antibiotics to come from houses, hospitals, pharmaceutical industry, as well as agriculture and livestock, because it's not only used as a medicine or a drug, but further as a growth promoter and fertilizer. And this might shock someone here who've not heard about it, but the dose we consume of the antibiotic is only not completely absorbed by the body, but only 20 to 50% is absorbed, and the rest is released through sewage. To remove antibiotics from the environment, mainly from water, there are several technologies, out of which we chose photocatalytic degradation and at the end adsorption to remove it, while we were thinking about a sustainable, eco-friendly way. A simple explanation of photocatalytic degradation, it requires the reaction medium where antibiotic is present, a photocatalyst, and a source of light, in which, under the effect of light, electrons in the photocatalyst or the semiconductor will be excited from the valence band to the conduction band, where it produces active radicals in the medium that will attack the antibiotic and then will degrade it into less toxic products such as CO2 and H2O. Metal organic frameworks, or MOFs. I guess some of you have heard about them. They are composed of metal cluster connected to ligands, to organic ligands, as we can see here as illustrated by this image. The balls, for example, are the metal cluster. Here in our case, because we are using UIO66, it's zirconium-based MOF, and the organic ligands connected to it to form specific 3D morphology, hexagonal or octahedral shape. They are known for high surface area, high porosity, high pore volume, tunable structure, and so on, that make them an excellent candidate to be used as photocatalyst in photocatalytic degradation. More specifically, if we want to focus onto the mechanism of degradation for MOFs, not only general semiconductor, we can see that excitation happen in the ligand, the organic ligand, and electrons move from the ligand to the metal cluster where the reaction happens and the pollutant, or in our case, tetracycline antibiotic, is being degraded. For UIO66 itself, there are various techniques to improve its activity, its performance under visible light. One of which is metal sensitization, or for example, based on literature, Fe sensitization can increase its visible light absorption, minimize its band gap energy, and suppress the recombination of the excited electron and positive holes. So MOFs for tetracycline removal. Again, we are using UIO66 zirconium-based MOF for the removal of tetracycline antibiotic under visible light. We tried two types of modification, one of which metal cluster modification by metal doping based on iron, nickel, and titanium. And the second of which, the functionalization of the metal, the organic metal, by amino group, NH2, and hydroxy group. We observed the change in the morphology, the surface morphology, for example, by FEM images, its crystallinity, its visible light absorption, and the most significant actually was the enhancement in the visible light absorption in the second graph as shown, in which the minimum absorption of light was for the UIO66 in the black curve, and all the modified samples showed enhanced absorption of visible light, as well as for the increase in the surface area of the increase or the decrease in the surface area of the UIO modified samples. We tested all of the modified samples for the adsorption reaction and under dark condition, as well as the degradation under white LED light in our labs and under real solar irradiations. We found out as a simple conclusion that metal doping is better than ligand functionalization when trying to remove tetracycline, either by adsorption or by degradation. Although here in this case, we found that the nickel and titanium doping was better, but we chose to work with Fe and further modify it further in order to stick to more sustainable, eco-friendly UIO66 or MOF for our application. This is why we prepared now UIO in a more eco-friendly way by the preparation without any modulator, so without any acid. It was previously prepared with some sort of acid. And now we varied the amount of Fe in the system from 0.1 molar concentration to 1.5. And we observed as well the effect on its crystallinity, minor effect on the visible light absorption. You can see so. The black is for the UIO66, all other except for the 0.1. We can see enhanced increase in the visible light absorption. The effect on the crystallinity was minor except for the 1.5 sample. The effect on the surface area as well was minor except for the highest content. This is AAS. The first graph shows the real amount of Fe found after preparation, the distribution on the surface. This is after testing for adsorption, and this is for real irradiation. In both cases, we see actually for the 0.5 and for the 1 enhancement from the black curve to the green and purple actually, as well as under the real solar irradiation. However, what we observed is that the enhancement for adsorption was more significant than that as a photocatalyst. And we calculated the Q, which is the adsorption capacity, and we found that for the optimal example, which is FeUIO, it was doubled. So we continued to try to consider, after we thought it would be a good candidate to be a super adsorbent for tetracycline, Fe UIO66. We varied the amount of the MOF, the pH of the system, the temperature, the amount of the tetracycline, the pollutant. We tested it in the presence of some common salts to try to do some same conditions as real world. And then we found out that under optimal conditions, high pH, high temperature, higher amount of the MOF, lower amount of tetracycline, that FeU1 was able to completely remove tetracycline in just 5 minutes, compared to the amount removed by UIO66 as a complete in about 25 to 30 minutes. As well, we found out that the mechanism of adsorption was not physical, but rather chemisorption, which is good to ensure that whatever is being adsorbed remains inside the MOF. After that, we tested its stability for 4 cycles. As we can see, we tested its characterization after use, and we found out that it was very stable. We confirmed using FTIR the presence of the bonds between tetracycline and the MOF. And as a conclusion, if you want to choose between ligand functionalization and metal doping, we go for metal doping. What metal dopant was, we chose Fe as a more sustainable. And for the percentage of Fe, yes, it does affect the morphology and performance. And we would go for FeUIO as an adsorbent rather than a photocatalyst for further reactions and application. Thank you. I would also like to thank Mrs. Aya Hashim who's part of this presentation was her master's thesis. And thank you all. Use antibiotics wisely.
Thank you, Radir. The floor is open for questions.
Nadir, if you could go to slide 13, please.
Yes.
Can you take some time and explain to me the difference between the different samples that you used in here? And also, if you could explain how you statistically evaluated the differences between the different samples in there. What was your statistical method to evaluate significant differences between these samples, if any? Use a student t-test? Did you use ANOVA? Are you familiar with those? Or
No.
Okay. So there was no statistical analysis of the
No,
differences?
just experimental results.
Right, okay. And can you then explain what are the differences between these curves in there?
Okay. So again, to focus more about Fe doped to IO66, after we chose the metal to be used, okay, we varied the amount of this dopant. So Fe is being doped into the metal cluster of the ligand. Okay, the amount of Fe added will affect eventually the characterization, the performance, and so on. Mainly, for example, the band gap energy. So it affects the band gap energy. So the amount of visible light to be absorbed, and eventually the amount of electrons to be excited, and eventually the performance. Same for the BET surface area or the pore volume that would affect the absorption of tetracycline. Eventually the efficiency. Okay, so we varied the amount of Fe from 0.1 molar ratio to 1.5 to try to find the optimal amount that will cause the best enhancement in the performance of this MOF, the UIO66.
Can you explain, for example, why the 1.5, for example, is not followed by the 1? It's not like an ordered. Why would 1.5, for example, be as low as the 0.1 and then suddenly the 1 is somewhere in the middle?
Okay.
So is the response not linear to the...
Okay, starting from the crystallinity. So as you can see there, and the surface area, it's a chain. So photocatalytic degradation, it's related to the morphology, related to the surface area, related to the pore volume that is actually very, very low in the case of 1.5. It's a big chain. Although its visible light absorption is enhanced, as you can see here, actually enhanced for the 1.5. But the other characteristics of the MOF that are needed in the reaction are deteriorated due to the excess amount of Fe. That through the formation of the MOF, there was like kind of competition between the Fe to be stuck to the ligand while the cluster was forming. So the internal pore structure and the framework structure of the UIO was affected by the excess amount of Fe.
Kind of, you have a linear relation until you get to a very high
Exactly, an
concentration of
optimal value beyond which it deteriorates.
Excellent, okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Radir. I know it's that the study is on tetracycline, but do you think it would work for other antibiotics?
We are trying. We are trying to expand that to other antibiotics and other dyes, actually. Especially now, you know, like by the FDA, the RED 3 is now like a big title, not to use it in food and so on. We are trying to expand our work to dyes, to common dyes, pollutant, and to other antibiotics.
And would you have to change the formulation, and would you have to optimize it?
One thing we learned through like the previous years is that, for example, for tetracycline, we need to look, for example, on the mesopore volume, okay? Because tetracycline by itself is a big molecule. So for this, we really focused on preparing UIO with mesoporous size. So we have to look more into the size, actually, of the pollutant that we will work on. And if it's about preparing a microporous, we know like by adding some acids and so on, it's a study now going on to change the pore structure in a way that suits the pollutant, for example.
Thank you.
So, for example, why is the 0.1 here has a 0.3 mesopore, whereas the 1.5 then gets a 0.4? If you look at the mesopore volume,
Yeah.
can you explain why does it have that
Same
behavior?
as, okay, same as the 1.5. We know that there is a change in the structure, some sort of the geometry of the structure, the pore structure. For example, this BET is affected, this characterization, I mean, is affected by the porosity of the sample. So if the sample has higher porosity, it will calculate it, the surface area will be linked to the high porosity. So if a sample actually has low porosity, its BET will be low. So this characterization is linked to the structure of the pore. So by some means which we could not actually really detect or understand what's happening inside the pores for the 0.1 and 1.5, but we can believe it's deteriorating by somehow. It doesn't fit, so it's somehow worse than the UIO 66.
All right, big applause for Adine. And we stay in the topic of natural elements. And from water, we go to sound. In particular, the title is Sound of Inflammation. Yes, zebra finch song under LPS-induced neuroinflammatory stress. I tried my best. Most of these things I personally don't understand. But it's my pleasure to introduce you Andrea Nasser, and he will take over from here.
After 4 presentations, you might think, why we are now listening to a guy talk about birds. But what if I tell you that these birds could help us uncover the mysteries of the brain and speech in humans? What if I tell you that these tiny creatures, with their beautiful and complex song, could help us detect neuroinflammation from just one song? Today, I want to take you into a journey, not a journey only of birds, but a neural symphony that underlies inflammation and memory. Because sometimes the key to understand the brain lies not in a brain, in a rat brain or in a computer model, but in the symphony of a bird. So to do so, I will start with a small introduction, showcasing our aims, the techniques and methodology that we used, showcasing our results, the math model that we are currently designing, and finally, a conclusion. So neuroinflammation is an inflammatory reaction that occurs in the central nervous system that can either be in the brain or in the spinal cord. It is induced by external foreign stimuli, such as an infection, stress, or even some physical stress, like a concussion or a cut. After these stimuli, a group of cells will launch hundreds of molecules to defend the site, more specifically the cytokines. In our study, we're targeting the brain by doing LPS injections or lipopolysaccharide. Lipopolysaccharides are molecules that we can find on the external shell of a bacteria. And when injecting into the system, will induce an inflammatory reaction. Hundreds of cytokines are involved, but we are focusing on only 2, the tumor necrosis factor alpha, or TNF-alpha for short, and interleukin-1 beta, because these 2 cytokines are the 2 major cytokines involved in these kind of reactions, because they play a role in enhancing this inflammatory reaction. And another molecule, which is a hormone, corticosterone, is also elevated during inflammation, but plays a different role. Its role is to inhibit the reaction to avoid chronic and permanent damage to the tissue. So now, why are we choosing birds? They communicate using songs. We also communicate, but using words. The same way we acquire speech by listening to the words, repeating it, and then we memorize it. The same way goes for birds. Anatomically, we can see that we also have a similar distribution of areas related to song production between humans and birds, and even the circuit is closely similar to each other. But birds have something special for them called the HVC, the high vocal center. So if you look at this representation of the brain, we can see multiple areas related to song production and even more interconnection between them. But if we look closely enough, we can see that there is one region that is interconnected with all other regions, which is the HVC, which orchestrates the whole song production process. So in this study, we're aiming to understand the state of the brain during inflammation by identifying the peak inflammatory time and how molecularly it is identified, it is modulated, the behavioral aspect of the birds, how these songs are being influenced and shaped by the LPS injection, and finally, we're trying to design a system of ODEs that will represent our biological model. So how are we achieving that? We're injecting birds with LPS and dividing them into 4 groups, each group that differs from the other with the time exposed to this LPS, 2 hours, 4 hours, and 6 hours, and finally 8. After that, we will surgically extract the brain and analyze it using 2 experimental techniques. PCR, okay, we're not checking if birds have COVID. PCR is a technique that searches for a certain RNA inside the sample, which is the brain in this case. And we're using PCR to find the interleukin-1 beta and the TNF-alpha genes. The second technique is ELISA, which is a technique that uses enzymes that bind specifically to the molecule of our interest, and we're using it here to detect the corticosterone. And for song analysis, we're gonna be using 2 softwares, Audacity and SAP. Audacity is a music and audio software that we use to clean the data, to clean our recordings, by cutting everything that is not related to a song. Then we export it to SAP. SAP is a software specific for songbirds. Using SAP, we can segment the song, we can define the syllables, and we can batch process to extract all the features that we want. If you can look at the picture, I already defined 1 syllable using the red line where the syllable starts and the blue line where it ends. For the results, we did the PCR for the whole brain, and we were able to find that we had a significant increase in the 2 cytokines, TNF-alpha and interleukin-1 beta, after injections of LPS. And we can clearly see that the peak inflammation is occurring after 2 hours for both cytokines. For future research, for the next step, we'll be using only the 2 hours to continue our results. So now we're checking the HVC using the PCR, again, for TNF-alpha and interleukin-1 beta, and ELISA for the corticosterone. We can clearly see that we have elevation in the 3 plots, but it is not yet statistically significant. That may be due to our small sample size that we need to increase to be able to validate our hypothesis. Now going for the behavioral assessment. These are 2 sonograms for the same bird. The first one is for the bird before doing anything to him, which is our control, and the second one is after 10 days of injections. Can anyone see any difference? I don't think so. So let's try and listen to the songs. So now the first song is the control song. And now for the 10 days after injections. That's even more hard. So what we have to do is some feature analysis. As we can see in this plot, we have 2 colors of clusters. The blue clusters represent the control bird that has that it is what we did nothing to him, and the red clusters represent the birds after 10 days of LPS injections, and we can clearly see that we have a shift in the clusters between the red and the blue clusters. I just want to point out that the pitch goodness represents how harmonically and accurate the syllables are being said by the bird. Okay, so we can clearly see that the neuroinflammation induced a shift in both duration and pitch goodness after injection with LPS. And finally, we're still designing a math model that represents our biological model. We've achieved now 5 equations, 1 for LPS, 2 for the cells that are involved in this reaction, and the 2 cytokines already mentioned, TNF and interleukin-1 beta. We just want to add the corticosterone and adjust the parameter as much as possible to fit our model. To conclude, in our research, new findings never investigated before were discovered. We were able to identify the peak inflammation time. We were able to quantify the behavioral change. And finally, we're trying to design a new math model that represents this inflammation. Now, my 10 minutes are done. This is our journey, but it's not the end. Many more mysteries are yet to be unfolded.
Thank you, Andrew. Floor is open for questions.
Thank you, Andrew. It's interesting work. So I wanted to ask you about the time that you chose. You said that peak of inflammation is 2 hours, and
Yes.
that's detected using PCR. Is that
Yes.
right? So how does that also translate regarding to ELISA? You also tested with ELISA, so which reflects the protein synthesis, right?
Yes, for ELISA, we didn't test for TNF alpha and interleukin. We only tested for the corticosterone.
Okay.
Okay, to be able, and we tested only on HVC. Our purpose here on the whole brain is only to define, to identify the peak inflammation time, because no one ever have reported. So we only knew based on literature that we have an inflammation occurring in the first 10 hours. So we wanted to know when it's happening to be able to proceed with our experiment.
Okay, but when we talk about inflammation, inflammation is not about RNA
Yes.
synthesis, right? So RNA synthesis is simply the step that precedes the
Production.
protein, right? And after protein, you initiate the process of inflammation, so that could even take longer, right? So I think for you to be able to determine inflammation, you're not looking at gene expression. So
Yes.
what did you do to actually identify inflammation?
Okay, we didn't do it yet, but we're gonna do IF staining to be able to see the inflammation at different time point and be able to assess exactly the peak.
And for the corticosterone,
Yes.
when was that evaluated?
2 hours.
Also 2 hours
Yes,
after.
everything related to HVC was taken at 2 hours.
And that's also gene expression?
That's hormone, not no, ELISA.
ELISA, but,
Yeah.
but then you're comparing it to here IL-1 and TNF.
No, I'm not
gene
comparing them. I'm putting them
next
together.
to each other.
Yes,
Just for us.
just to showcase, that's for the HVC.
Oh, so you're seeing here concentration in the tissue.
Yes.
Right. Okay, and then you're expecting that this is because you're also looking at the features of the song.
Yeah.
After 10 days.
Yes, we wanted to run a chronic inflammation. We stopped now for 10 days to assess what we got.
But then are you testing it also?
Each time point?
Yeah.
Yes, we have the recordings for every single day.
Okay.
We haven't yet
analyzed
it.
Right, because as you're seeing in here, so this is the after how many hours?
This is after 2 hours.
Okay, and so.
And the behavior is after 10 days.
Right.
But we have every 1 minute.
Okay. Would you expect that you would see differences in the behavior at different times?
It's expected, but not at early stages.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm curious about the features you used.
Yes.
So what are they?
Sorry.
Why did you choose these features? So can you comment
Yes.
on the choice
actually,
of the features?
We had multiple feature analysis, but for the case of this presentation, we chose only the pitch goodness. We had the amplitude, the frequency, and even not only comparing them to the duration. So we have multiple plots. We chose this one because it's easier to see it. I know some of them, if we take frequency, for example, they overlaying each other. So it's not visually visible. So we chose pitch goodness. And pitch is a very important feature, and pitch goodness is very important in songs and birds, sorry, because they do a lot of harmonies. So this will help us assess how good their harmonies, their songs is good.
Okay, and since you've mentioned it, is there any metric to differentiate between the goodness under the control set and the pitch goodness under, so you said visual, right?
Yes.
We can look at it visually, see a little bit of change,
Yes.
but is there any metric, like quantitative measure
Yes.
that can differentiate or separate these two sets?
For pitch goodness, higher values always is a pitch goodness that is more focused and stable. So when the values decreases, we have less good pitch goodness.
Okay, but how less they should be in order for you to say this is inflammation versus no inflammation? So there
Okay.
should be some
Yes,
sort of
we can run
yeah.
statistical analysis by we tried it by counting how much we have in this cluster and how much sometimes we have a decrease in the number even. So we can do statistical analysis to confirm this.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. And now, the last but not the least, we go from the natural sounds and waters into environment of, fortunately, our everyday life. It's my pleasure to present Jana El Haj, and her title is Rescue Me, dealing with humanitarian application of locating survivors under the rubber. And please welcome Jana on the stage.
Hi. We've all witnessed the horrific war crimes committed against Gaza and Lebanon during the past 2 years, where buildings collapsed onto civilians, killing thousands and leaving hundreds still unaccounted for under rubble. This is why I'm presenting to you our FYP project, Rescue Me. The main goal of our project is to optimize the golden 72 hours before the rescue mission turns into a recovery mission, specifically in the context of low resource areas, where access to necessary technologies which help in improving and optimizing search and rescue missions are not available. Based on a conversation with the Lebanese Red Cross and the Lebanese Civil Defense, we are still in Lebanon using traditional methods such as asking neighbors if and where their neighbors are, or using dogs, but that is in rare cases. The necessary technologies, such as the ones that were used in the 2023 earthquake in Turkey, are not accessible in Lebanon. These technologies include robots, ground-penetrating radars, acoustic and seismic sensors, search cameras, and cellular signal detections, all of which are not self-contained, non-expert friendly, do not operate for long hours, are not compact, portable, and are not accessible to the general public. That's why, with that said, we aim to design something that requires no infrastructure, as this is the first thing that is targeted during wars. As we have seen in Gaza, the first thing that was targeted is cellular towers. Additionally, it should not require any formal testing, so that anyone with access to our design can help play a role in these search and rescue missions. It should also be compact and portable and available at minimum cost, so that anyone and anywhere, regardless of their economic situation, has access to this device, even normal civilians. It should efficiently operate under rubble and provide real-time feedback in order to optimize search and rescue operations. For that, our proposed solution was developing an app that would be able to save lives by detecting survivors under rubble. Any victim who has any sort of Bluetooth-enabled device, such as a smartwatch or a sports ring, we would be able to detect them and convert to them. Our app operates in two main modes. The first one being the Bluetooth mode, in which every rescuer can connect to a victim and convert to them. We are using here a gradient-based approach, a localization algorithm, as well as an optical flow algorithm to provide feedback. The second mode, which is the Wi-Fi direct mode, it builds up on the Bluetooth mode, but allows here collaborative rescue missions to be able to optimize and improve search times. First mode, which is the Bluetooth mode, as I said, it's based on a gradient search algorithm where rescuers first determine the direction that the victim is in. Based on that, we are using an optical flow algorithm to detect movement and give real-time feedback to the rescuer whether or not they are converging towards or further away from their victim. While this is all running, we are able to minimize the search zone and converge to the victim. In order to validate the feasibility of our algorithm, we did an analysis on our Bluetooth signals, which is the basis of our project. Bluetooth signals in mobile devices are very noisy and suffer from very low SNR rates, which is why we apply the Kalman filter in order to minimize these errors. However, with that, still the signals are noisy and we are not able to get an exact approximation. However, we are still able to determine whether or not we are able to converge to the victim or are we diverging away. Based on the feedback from the Bluetooth mode, here in the Wi-Fi direct mode, we are able to allow several users to collaborate together by finding overlapping search zones, as users would here share their GPS location as well as their search zones. We would compute the overlapping zones and direct all rescuers into this zone, which would by then minimize the search zone and help decrease rescue time. With all that said, wrapping up our project, our app helps save lives, an application which is accessible for everyone. Anyone who has a mobile device would be able to participate in this rescue mission and help save a life, especially in the context of low resource, in the countries, low resource countries. And thank you to my teammates and our advisor, Dr. Ayman.
So from an experimental perspective, what have you been able to do? Or?
Well, now we have tested the algorithm in open air and started with the testing of how much are we able to, what's the range of Bluetooth under rubble. Still now we can detect people until 3 floors below.
This you've tested that already? Is that validated in test or simulated?
No, validated. We've tested it in buildings.
In buildings? How?
We are still detecting. We are still in the early stages of our testing, so we are still determining in a building how many floors to get an approximation.
Okay, but not in a damaged building, in a regular building, because that's very different, right? The setup is going to be very different. So how do you plan to validate? How do you want to, what are the methods to do it?
We are still figuring it out.
Thank you, Jana. The results of the Wi-Fi Direct, are these results better than the Bluetooth? So you have a comparison, because you didn't show any comparison between the two methodologies.
Wi-Fi Direct here is used as a communication, where the rescuers are able to form a Wi-Fi Direct group, and they can communicate with each other, and that's working.
Okay, so this is not used in order to detect if there is a person under the rubble.
It's just a way of communication between users.
Okay. So what I thought it would be in this context, so probably I would like to seek your opinion. What if two users collaborate in terms of, so you have this Bluetooth signal, and if you have many sensors that are detecting this, and you do a majority voting, for example. So from different directions, let's say, we're trying to detect if there is a Bluetooth signal under the rubble, right? This is the idea. And you might say yes or no based on whatever you detect a signal, whether it's noisy or not. So why not, if you have like many like phones that are trying to detect the same thing, but like distributed geographically in a different region, and you think this would enhance? So I would like to know, yes, based on your experiments and whatever you've done, if this might be better, might give you good results, or no, it's like redundant because the geographic area is so small, so all of them will give you the same answer somehow.
Yes, that would help when we have several rescuers working together and they are able to coordinate. However, our focus was in low resource areas for civilians to take part mainly in these rescue missions. So it would be harder for them to collaborate and collectively. collectively collaborate, which is why we decided on focusing on the main algorithm where each one of them would be able to work alone, and the Wi-Fi direct mode, they wouldn't have really access to it. It would be working autonomously alone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question concerning Bluetooth. So in our phones, antennas for Bluetooth are omnidirectional. So we'll take signals from everywhere, from all directions. How can I know if there's someone under rubble? For example, me and a couple of people are turning on Bluetooth. How would I know that I'm catching the signal under the rubble and not the signal from the one beside me?
Every one of them would have a specific ID where we are working on a self-activation feature. So with the self-activation feature, the ID of the victim would be unique to the victim. It would indicate that this is a victim and not a rescuer or any other person.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you. And I think with that, we reach the end of the session. I would like to thank you all for attending the session. Thank you to our judges, and thank you to our amazing speakers who delivered great presentations. And we hope that you enjoy the rest of IDEAS 2025.